I had mentioned before I was gonna see about getting a boat gas tank from my dad because he had a bunch of old boat stuff. But the tanks he has, he had a couple. They were all metal, similar to this one, but his were actually corroded and rusted inside. I picked this one right here up at the flea market. I don't know what brand tank it was. It's been painted a couple times. I took the fitting out of it here. It had some kind of quick connect on it. So I took and cut that off and took it on the belt sander and sanded it off there. I'm gonna tap it to 3/8 pipe thread so I can put me a fitting in it. It goes on there like that. So what I ended up doing, I was afraid that if I drilled it out big enough for the 3/8 pipe, it was too big for a 1/4 inch pipe, and I was afraid that if I drilled it out for the 3/8 pipe, it was going to make it too thin. So, because it's tapered as it comes back. So what I ended up doing, I took a 3/8 tube nut for just like a 3/8 fuel line, and threaded for it to go in there, and threaded it in. And then I took 1/8 inch tap for 1/8 inch pipe thread and threaded that fitting. And I have a whole lot of these old fuel filters that are 1/8 inch pipe on this side, and I have an aluminum crush washer there. And so just take that 1/8 inch pipe thread and screw in, tighten up flush. So like I said, it's not under any pressure as long as it's not sucking air. The fuel pump will draw that out, no problem. So I picked this, like I said, I picked that tank up at the flea market yesterday for $8, and I think it's going to work out good for my engine test stand. There it is. Yeah, put it back in. Like I said, I think that's going to work out really good for my test stand. Made a tray there for where the fuel boat gas tank is going to sit, and used 2 pieces of scrap here I had to make a battery tray. Got the tank and the battery sitting there, seeing how it's going to look. I still need to build me a panel like down under where the gauges are. Probably put me 2 pieces of tubing down to be able to mount my starter solenoid and my electronic box for the ignition. So decided to go ahead and make me a spot there in between the battery and the fuel tank. Now that I've got the fuel tank and know how much room it's going to take up, there was enough room in between them there. I made that to where it's on like a platform there. I had to unbolt. It's got 2 3/8 studs from underneath, so I can just take the nuts off and take the whole thing out if I need to. So I've got the solenoid mounted and the ignition box mounted there, so now I can get everything wired up here. That's my next step. Been working on the wiring here. Wiring it all up. Got the master disconnect right here. Just kills all the power. Turn it on. Got all the lights just wired into the disconnect. So the voltmeter shows the voltage in the battery when you turn it on. All the lights. The push button here. Don't have the starter. I don't even have the right motor on the stand yet, but it's engaging the solenoid. See, I took and mounted the electric fuel pump I had to that handle. Just a little universal type. They're advertised 5 to 9 psi, but I've tried them several times with a fuel pressure gauge, and every one I've had they're normally flowing about 6.5. So, but they're advertised 5.5 to 9 psi. But they work fine with the carburetor. They come with a little screw-in fuel filter. I've got this. I mounted it there to where I can just take and loop a fuel line around to this tank if I'm using the pump. But like for the motor, for the 289 here, it's got a new mechanical pump on it, so I'm just going to hook up the mechanical pump. But this is for engines that may not have a fuel pump. So, and I fix it to where to unplug. That way I can actually, like when I drag in another old piece of junk, I can unhook this. I just unplug it, make me up 2 alligator clips for the hot in the ground, and be able to plug it in, and then I'll have a fuel tank and a pump all in one, and I can just hook it straight to the carburetor, whatever I'm working on. But it does work. So got some more wiring to do here on the ignition box, wiring it up. I've got to, hook up the tack wire once. Got to get the coil on. Those switches I used, they're all the 3 push-pull switches are out of. I bought them in a flea market, but they say Bluebird on them, so I'm sure they're out of an old bus. But the way I done it, I've got my 2 battery leads. The battery lead coming into the disconnect, and then the one going to the solenoid. Once so I've got everything powering up off of it. That way, once you turn the disconnect on, everything's powering up. So I put in a fuse holder because they're all 3 switches are sharing the same inlet. They just loop over one to another. It's powering from it. The voltmeter, it's hot. I just hooked it up there also. That way, when I turn the disconnect off, it's off. And of course, the lights are hooked there. The pink and black wire, the middle switch is the one running over to the fuel pump. And this purple one will be for the electric fan. I'm gonna hook up a relay there. Just mounted the relay for the fan right here. That way, because to put it in here, I was just afraid it was going to block all that if I have to change anything. and mounting it up here like this, I didn't have to use any other wire. Just put ends on the wires that were on it, on my harness that I had for the relay. So have the fan on here, the radiator's back on the stand. It's wired up and works. Fuel pump works. And I have actually tested the ignition. I actually plugged the distributor and the coil up and grounded the distributor to the stand, spun it over, it fired good. So you can see there, it's got just a regular Ford DuraSpark ignition module, and the way I wired it in, I put like a Mopar style ballast resistor. So a lot of people say you don't have to have one when you're wiring up these, but an old man years ago taught me how to do that, to wire up those, and I've just done it the way he taught me. You know, it was back before you could Google everything, you know. So that's the way he taught me. That's the way I've always done it. Had good success out of it. It may not be necessary, but it's the way I've always done it. So, and like I said, I tried it out there. It fired good. So bring around to the other side here. The other thing I'll do once I get it painted is I have just the wires zip tied here and my ignition harness, the ignition harness one. Right here, that's the plug for the distributor, and the plug for just a forward coil. I have a few of those laying around, and I figured that'd be fine for this test stand. So, but after this engine's broke in and once it's painted, I'll probably put some wire covering over everything, make it look a little better. But I wasn't really going for looks out of any of it, really, more for function. And so my next video of anything on the engine stand will be actually the engine on here running. But I do appreciate all those who watch, comment, and are subscribed. I appreciate it a lot. Thank y'all.